All right. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order, the Scientific Advisory Committee Review Subcommittee. I would like to remind everyone to please speak up and clearly so everyone can be heard. And I think just to make sure we know who's here for the committee and anyone else, we'll go ahead and do introductions. I think it might be easier if I call on everyone for introductions. I'm just going to go down my screen. So Ms. Forey.
Good morning, Erin Forey. I serve as the Quality Assurance Representative on this committee.
Thank you. Dr. Maha.
Yes. I'm George Maha, and I serve on the SAC committee.
Great. Ms. Bro.
Good morning, Jennifer Rowe on the SAC Committee, Forensic Biology.
Great. Dr. Vallone.
Peter Vallone from NIST on the SAC Biology Committee.
Okay, thank you. I'm Kathy Corrado. I represent ASCLD, or American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors. How about I think I'll go ahead and have the Virginia Crime Committee staff just introduce themselves so we know who they are. Could you please introduce yourself, Ms. Howard?
Yes, good morning. My name is Kristen Howard. I'm director of the Crime Commission. We've got two other staff members here with us today. I'll turn it over to Christina Arrington. I see her on my screen, so she can introduce herself as well. Good morning.
Thank you.
Morning, Christina Arrington, Senior Methodologist with the Crime Commission, and I'm figuring out how to edit my name, so my last name's there, but it's Christina. It's fine too.
Thank you. And we have one other person from the Crime Commission.
That is Colin Drabert. Linda, you.
I just made him a panelist. I had not done that
Thank
yet,
you.
but Colin should be there now.
Colin,
he's
you're muted.
You're still muted.
Sorry, I did not unmute when I came into the room. Good morning, Colin Drabert. I'm the Deputy Director at the Crime Commission. Thank you.
Great. And we have Director Jackson.
Yes, I'm Linda Jackson. I'm the Director of the Department of Forensic Science. I also do sit on the Scientific Advisory Committee.
Okay. Mr. Bird.
I'm Chief Deputy Director Mason Bird from the Department of Forensic Science.
Thank you. And Ms. Jenkins.
Good morning. I'm Amy Jenkins. I'm counsel for DFS.
All right. Did I catch everyone? I think I did, but is anyone that I didn't mention? No. Okay, great. So thanks everyone for being here. For any members of the public that may be here, we will be taking comments at the end of the meeting. There's a section that will ask for that. Our first order of business today will be the adoption of the agenda for this meeting. Everyone should have, the members should have received a copy of the draft agenda from Ms. Strobel. Does anyone have any suggested changes to today's agenda? All right, hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the draft agenda.
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Vallone. Second, does anyone second that?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Maha seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? There's none, so the agenda for today has been adopted. Our next item on the agenda is approval of the draft minutes from the January 9th, 2024 meeting. Ms. Strobel previously sent a link to the draft minutes. I hope everyone had a chance to review them. I did, and I just want to commend whoever did them. They're very comprehensive, and I really appreciate that. Does anyone have any proposed changes to the minutes from the last meeting? All right, hearing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the draft minutes.
Motion to approve the draft minutes.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor to approve the draft minutes from the January 9th, 2024 meeting, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, the motion passes. So the meeting minutes from the last meeting have been approved. All right, so now we're moving on to old business. The first item that we have is to hear from Ms. Jenkins about the draft of the proposed notifications. I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Jenkins.
Yes, I will do my best.
Mhm.
So the draft notifications were actually sent out to the subcommittee and have been posted on the website as well. There's been one change to the defendant's notification that I'll go through in a second. But the purpose of having you all review these is to ensure that you agree with what we've indicated as far as the issues with Ms. Burton's work, and also to try to get these out as quickly as we can to Commonwealth's attorneys and chiefs of police and sheriffs so they can begin reviewing the list to see where they are able to determine that there's actual convictions and whether there is evidence still available so that that evidence is retained. I went back when we were deciding all this and kind of looked at the allegations that were part of the podcast that talked about issues with prior case reviews and tried to address as many of those in both this process and in the case review process as we're able to do. And then I think the Crime Commission will also be responding to some of those critiques as well. The draft notification to the Commonwealth's attorneys, I'm going to attempt to share here. We'll see how I do. Are y'all seeing the draft notification for the Commonwealth's attorneys at this point?
Yes.
Yes.
If you could increase the size so that we're only looking at one page at a time, it would be easier to read.
Oh, okay. I'm working on it. How's that? Better?
Better?
Let's try 125. I don't want to drop the whole page up. There we go.
That's better.
That's better. Thank you.
So in essence, I think the most operative provision is the review of the information that you all receive, both from outside sources and then the discussions that we had regarding the Grimm case at the last meeting, and noting that you had concerns and deficiencies noted on all of the work, but also on these three cases that you indicated were of the biggest concern: the sexual assault case, where there was changes to results without any additional testing, in another sexual assault case where the serology results were changed without adequate explanation in the case notes, and then in the Grimm case, even though it's not named, the certificate of analysis indicating that there were sperm identified, which we were not able to confirm with further testing, and that the hairs did not come back to the victim as was reported out in the hair comparison analysis. So the plan for this basically is we have that list of 10,000 case numbers. We're going to talk a little bit further, Dr. Arrington is, about how we don't think those 10,000 numbers are necessarily coming back to 10,000 case files, that they're duplicate case numbers, we believe, for a number of these, if they came in from the regional lab, They were assigned a regional lab case number as well as a central lab case number back in that time period. So we're kind of working on finalizing what the resulting numbers of cases were. But the thought process is to get that case list out as soon as possible with this notification to the Commonwealth's attorneys and the chiefs and the sheriffs so that they can begin to review their records, determine if convictions resulted, and if evidence is available either in the law enforcement agency or in the court. They will also get the agency case numbers so that they can utilize those, because that is an important piece for them. They don't keep cases by the FS lab number, they keep them by their agency case number. In addition, Ms. Howard and I will be talking, and Director Jackson will be talking to the Commonwealth's attorneys on Sunday, the 14th, so that we can notify them of what has occurred, tell them that these notifications will be coming. I hope we can get these out with your approval by the end of April, the first part of May. And then Ms. Howard and I also are going to speak at the Sheriff's Association on the 25th. And I believe she's also working with the Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police to set up a webinar to discuss this as well. But she can correct me on that if I am incorrect. So that is the notification to the sheriffs and the chiefs. I guess right now would be a good time to ask if there are any changes or edits or anything to that document.
I had one suggestion on the third subparagraph where you're listing the cases. Is it worth breaking out the hairs into another subcategory just so it stands out?
Yes, sir. I can do that.
Yeah, so you can put another bullet point and just say, in the same case, hairs were submitted, and that way the hairs are standing out from the serology.
Okay. We will do that. I'll figure out a way to morph that and make it readable. We can do two sub bullets under that.
You could do it that way too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the hair, all the rest of them are dealing with serology, and now you've got hairs.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Maha. Does anyone else have any other suggested changes or discussion?
I think it looks good. I think I'm just re-summarizing what Amy said. Essentially, this goes out to the sheriffs and chiefs, and there's 10,000 numbers, and then 10,000 cases. Some of them might be duplicates, and then they have to look within their own system how they number those, and kind of you're asking them to get back to you with things that may cross connect there or cross reference. Is that right?
Correct. So, well, I think the Crime Commission staff will tell you that they're doing a great job of cross-referencing these. I would love to be able to give the actual case numbers as opposed to, the actual cases as opposed to the case numbers, so they don't have to work through the duplications. But I don't know whether we're going to be there yet, and I don't want to hold off on sending it. They need to get working on it as soon as they can. So.
Great. That makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I can move on to the second defendant's notification. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can figure this out. All right, and if I've done this right, you all should be seeing the defendant's notification at this point in time.
Yes.
Yes, could you do it, make it one page again, please, Amy?
Yes. That is a little bit too close.
No, that's good.
Oh, okay, never mind. All right, so this is the defendant's notification. Their copy has been revised slightly because we have been working with the UVA Innocence Project to ask if they would be willing to spearhead a lawyer coalition and use them as the contact point for the defendants. I kept this letter very simple. Part of the criticism that was raised in the podcast was that the letter was frightening to people who received it, or confusing, or too intellectual, or whatever the case might be. So I tried to keep this as simple as I could, and also wanted to give them a contact point, which we do with other reviews as well, but make sure that they understood exactly who they could contact to see what what could be done for them, and talk with a lawyer or get referred to a lawyer who could help them. So these are going to be identified as we go. The focus is really, as we talk about the case review, is to focus in first on the convicted incarcerated. We are pointing out here that they can contact UVA IP, that they can discuss any testing that might be available, and resubmission of the evidence if we can locate some, and that the prosecutor has been notified. There's some question here as to who should sign, and that I would leave to your discretion on that. If we have the board chair sign, it might slow it down a little bit as we get that to the board to sign. They have signed the hair review notifications, or I can sign them from here, or Director Jackson can sign them from here, however you all want to proceed. So I'll stop there. This may morph some as we look to what the General Assembly is going to do as a result of the survey that the Crime Commission is taking throughout the course of the year. But like I said, the focus would be on those incarcerated individuals right now as quickly as we can to get them notified. The other thing I will probably do as well is send out a DOC notification to everyone across their the tablets that the inmates have. We did that with the hair review. Just in case we're missing anybody, they can write to us to see if they're included or not as well. So that's that notification. You can let me know if you have any edits or changes. We will likely drop or leave the sentence at the end that's in brackets in there that we can't provide them with any legal advice.
Thank you. I think this looks really good. I'm very appreciative that you are including the Virginia Innocence Project. And I think, as you stated, the concerns that people had with the last letter, that maybe it was a little too scary for some people, if that's the right word. I think including the Innocence Project in here is probably a really nice thing to do, so that hopefully that'll give some people some reassurance that it's not more people that they need to be concerned of. So I think that's great. Does anybody else have any thoughts or concerns or questions, amendments?
I have a comment. In this, you use the term serologist, and if you're trying to make it simpler or more clear, you might want to change it from serologist to person. Because I don't think anyone will know what serologist, these people that are getting it won't know what a serologist is. And it's even archaic in the forensic community.
Okay.
And just go through and change serologist to person throughout.
Yes, sir.
And I think that would be more readable for this audience.
And it still has the forensic casework of one person. So there, it's
right.
Yeah.
I think there's just in there there's a couple serologists in there. And
I think that I've got them all.
Yep.
I don't know, this might be semantics. I personally maybe think the word individual instead of person
I was thinking the same thing, potentially.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know why, but it sounds different to me for some reason. But I appreciate your point, Dr. Maha. I think I agree. I think that's
I have no preference, so individual is fine. Whatever makes everybody happy.
I don't think that letter is a place for it, but obviously that a question might be, who is this person or where is she? And that she, do you need to know that she's deceased? Is that something that's useful to put in this letter or not? Or is that something that's followed up with later?
Well, certainly, the lawyers in this know that she has passed away. So I would think that that would be communicated.
Yeah.
At that point.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that need to be communicated about what's happened and why and what might be available to them and why that would be the subject matter of the lawyers, I think, to talk with them about.
Okay. Thanks.
The biggest thing is getting them in touch with the lawyers. So.
Right. And I think your idea of doing it is ASAP is a good idea, like you said.
Yeah, and this will go to the other convicted individuals who are not incarcerated as well, but it's just going to be some time until we identify all of them and know whether they're alive or deceased, and also get a new, a most recent address. That's just going to take some time. So.
And when you said you'll be sending it to Doc, I mean that. So can you just explain what that is? That's a notice that goes out to everyone that's currently incarcerated?
It is. What we would do is indicate something similar, because that's what I did with the hair. I indicated, if you had hair analysis conducted in your case and you would like to have us review the case to see if you are included for this review, they send letters to me. We got about 30 letters from inmates. A lot of them did not qualify for the review, and I think probably we'll have a better idea from the case numbers that our case files we wind up getting, who's in and who's out. But just to make sure, out of an abundance of caution that we don't miss anybody, we can send something on those tablets to all of the inmates to just let them know that if they have serology or hair done by Ms. Burton, to reach out.
Just thinking out loud here, would it help at all to include like a date in there? Like if you were convicted by a certain date, it has it in there. Okay. So, because I'm just wondering, you might get, current people that from 2000s that you're going to have to weed through a lot of people. So you have the dates in there. I think that's probably sufficient. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot about
that. We still will. We'll still get a number of letters when you see if they're included, even with the dates in. But we would clarify that it's the 70s and 80s that we're looking at, and that it's Miss Burton's cases.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that the inmates would, or the people that are affected probably wouldn't remember Mary Jane Burton's name, but they probably would know from the date. So I think, that sounds good.
A lot of them have their transcripts.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Okay. Any other thoughts or any changes? So we made this one change, swapping out serologist for the term individual. So I think then, we have to vote on each of them separately. Is that correct? Or I think we can vote on them together. Is that possible?
You can vote on them together in a block.
Okay. All right.
Can I ask one thing, Amy? I think you may have said this, but I just wanted to verify that Jennifer Givens and Juliet Hatchett that are listed in here, they did have a chance to review this letter.
They did.
Right. Okay.
And they're okay with it as drafted, understanding it might morph some as it becomes clearer what kind of case approach they can take.
Thank you.
Okay, so I will ask for a motion to approve the notification to the police agencies and the amended notification to the defendants. Do I have a motion to approve both of those?
I'm
I have a
motion
motion,
to
yes,
approve.
motion to approve both. Sorry.
All right, so I heard Dr. Vallone make the first motion and Dr. Maha seconded that. Is that right?
That works.
Okay.
I
Thank
think I
you.
was trying to make the first one, but I'll second it.
I couldn't tell which was which.
I think we started at the same time.
Okay. So all in favor for approving both of these, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes and the draft notifications and the proposed process have been approved. All right. Moving on to the next item, we have Ms. Jenkins will discuss the draft review plan that the department has to review these cases.
All right, sharing again, I hope. So we have been working very diligently since you met in January, talking both to the Crime Commission, who will speak about their part in a little bit, but also to the stakeholders in this group, or to this group, to see what kind of assistance we could obtain. Part of the critique of the podcast was that we didn't focus on where testing would make a difference, and we didn't accept help from outside attorneys as quickly as we should have. So the Crime Commission convened a work group that met back on February 15th. That work group included Crime Commission staff, DFS staff, prosecutors, representatives from the Commonwealth Attorney Services Council, the Indigent Defense Commission, other private defense attorneys, the Office of the Attorney General, the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project, as well as staff members from the governor's office and from the secretariat. So we worked on determining the best path forward, and that group was wonderful in helping us get a path forward and also providing us with resources for attorneys that would look at these cases for us and with us. So I think part of the group listings here are, we've got the execution cases, we've got the exoneration cases, we've got those that are convicted and incarcerated. We think right now we've got 108 individuals that Mary Jane Burton either handled their case where they're incarcerated or handled a case before they were incarcerated and is on that list. So we need to work through that list to determine if they're being held on the Burton case. But at this point in time, we've got 108 individuals listed on that. And then also working through to determine who was convicted. We've got some of the post-conviction PC project information that's going to be of assistance in that. But whatever cases were not in the PC project, we have to determine whether or not they were charged, convicted, and be able to locate their contact information on that as well. And then we've got no convicted, no suspect cases as well, which I would presume we would take no action on if we don't have resulting incarcerated or convicted people there. The exonerations you all heard about last meeting, the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project, Sean Armbrust, who is here on this call, I think, agreed that they would assist with reviewing the exonerations as well as the executions, and we would report out any identified errors that are on those. The executions, I've done a preliminary review because I think that is of concern to everybody. And I'm going to try to see if I can share that now. So I'm going to stop and share again. And I'm not sure I can get this any bigger. So if you can bear with me, there are 8 executed individuals that, in reviewing the file, DFS believes that Ms. Burton conducted the serology work on those files. There are the green cases are ones where the PC results indicated that the executed individual was included. And I put the PC results out on that, and I will share this with you all after, but we certainly want the Innocence Project to review these and also support whatever I indicated on this chart. The review was conducted looking at the Supreme Court opinions on the factual recitations about the facts of the case and also what testimony was provided if that was recited. I'm not a big fan of relying on Supreme Court opinions. I'd like to pull the transcripts in these just to verify all of this. And also have the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project review the PC results as well. There are 2 here that no PC testing, or 3 rather, that no PC testing was done, or profiles were not developed. And you can see that's Earl Clanton, who was executed in '88 before DNA was available. Correll, who was executed in 1996. But I don't believe that serology or hair played any role in that trial. And then we've got the Edward Fitzgerald case, who was executed in 1992. No DNA profiles were developed from that PC testing. So we'll have the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project review those, as well as Michael Smith. There were PC results in the Smith case, but we did not have a reference sample for Mr. Smith. We got no results from the saliva and control swabs on that. And there was no hit on the data bank because he was executed in 1986. So we will need to have them look through that as well. But we've got a fair showing where PC results confirm or that serology is either tracking with or the evidence is there as well. So we'll have the Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project finish reviewing those and report back in October, I would hope, as well as looking at the exonerations. Going back to the case review slide. UVA IP has agreed, and Juliet, I think both Juliet and Hatchett and Jenny Gibbons are on this call as well. They have agreed to provide assistance with the convicted and incarcerated. They're looking at balancing resources as well. And so they wanted to see, what numbers we're coming out with on the convicted portion. And whether they need to put together a bigger coalition or a different coalition of lawyers to look at the convicted and not incarcerated. But the convicted and incarcerated, they've been able to talk with a number of private attorneys who are willing to assist in reviewing these cases. So we are going to work closely with them to get that list narrowed down as quickly as possible to how many people we have involved. And to share what information we have about the cases. The budget language that is going to be addressed by the Crime Commission staff in a little bit does give us the authority to release case file information to attorneys that are assisting us. Normally we would have some problems with that under FOIA, and but that has been eliminated. So we'll be able to do that, and those lawyers will also be helping if there's motions that can be filed as well. Part of the PC project critique was that there was not enough sharing with the lawyers that volunteered, that they were limited. They were told they couldn't represent these individuals. I don't see any reason why that would need to be the case. If they feel that there's something that could be filed to assist that individual, getting it taken care of as soon as possible is what we want to do. So They will be assisting with that, and then we'll work with the Crime Commission. We have the PC project information already on a number of these cases, probably about half. The other half, we're going to work on demographic information and determining if they've been convicted or not. So that's the overall project that's going to probably take at least until October, and probably a little bit more than that. But we'll be trying to harness resources from the court clerks and the sheriffs and the chiefs and the Commonwealth's attorneys in order to get to this information as quickly as we can. DNA testing is offered by the department in all of these. We did not think it was the right time to ask for any kind of grant funding. I think the purpose of the review by the Crime Commission is to determine how much we're dealing with, what kind of evidence is still out there available for testing. And once we get those numbers in, we will know, what we can ask for, either in grant funding through the Bloodsworth grant or funding through the Crime Commission from the General Assembly, because I think that's what the General Assembly is looking at, is how many cases do we need to be preparing for either regular DNA testing or mitochondrial DNA testing, whatever the case might be. So that's kind of the case plan, with the thought process that we would report back to you all in October on where we were. We should have some kind of idea on executions and exonerations to close that piece out. Hopefully we'll have a better picture to share with you of the incarcerated, and then be working pretty diligently on the convicted as well. I can answer any questions you all have.
I have one for you. Is there any coordination with the other investigations we've had with the DNA or the samples that were taped into the files long ago, that I guess it started all this, because that was Mary Jane Burton?
Those are not all Miss Burton's cases, because some other scientists for a little while taped down samples as well. But yes, and that's the beauty of having the Crime Commission involved, is they have all of that data. So they'll be able to, and they're cross-referencing that data. So we'll have a better idea once Dr. Arrington has done her magic with all of the data, because that is literally what she does. And we want to take advantage of all of that information that we have and be able to communicate that to the lawyers. We'll share the PC results with the lawyers, but there were some there that, a big chunk that were inconclusives. So, that's where they may be looking to find other evidence to test Dr. Maha, since what we have taped down in the files didn't render any results.
Yeah, well, some of the newer techniques might be able to resolve them too. So that would be another route you could go.
Yes, sir.
Amy, I have a question, just so I understand. When we're talking about case review, really you're looking at the demographics and if the person was convicted or not, and then you said possibly reading transcripts. I mean, that it's basically just reviewing the process of the case. We're not going back and looking at files or anything regarding the science, right? It's just the process of the case.
I think the thought process was that a review of the serology results really wouldn't be very probative. So the thought process is testing and offering DNA testing if the facts indicate that it either hasn't been done, or that we have probative evidence out there to test that could be definitive or helpful in determining guilt or innocence. So the review really by the UVAIP and the other lawyers will be looking to see what testing has already been done, what testing can be done, and getting it so that we can get that testing done by getting the evidence submitted. So I know that the executions and exonerations, I think Mid-Atlantic Innocence Project may ask a serologist to take a look at the serology results and report those back out. But they'll either recruit somebody or a lawyer who knows serology to take a look at those. But we'll work with them to figure out if we have somebody here that can help or if they are going to recruit somebody from the outside world.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I do agree with that. I think that's what we said the last time was it's just not worth going through the case files. It's better to identify the cases that, and then if they have any evidence left, that can be tested. So I think that makes sense. Anybody else have any other questions? No. Okay, so I think at this time then, thank you for that information, Ms. Jenkins. If there's no other questions, I will ask for a motion to approve the proposed review plan and process that Amy.
So moved.
Dr. Maha, is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Valone, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion has passed. The proposed review plan and process has been approved. All right, thank you. So at this time, we'll move on to new business. In the first item on the agenda under new business is a review of the proposed budget language and state crime commission coordination by Ms. Howard, the executive director of the Virginia State Crime Commission.
Good morning, everyone. We have heard the phrase crime commission kind of brought up a lot, but I really felt that it would be helpful to kind of give everyone an overview. Well, what is this crime commission everyone keeps talking about if you have not heard of our agency before? So we are a state agency. We're in the legislative branch of government. We're also a criminal justice agency, and we are statutorily created. And as previously mentioned, the post-conviction DNA project, we worked very closely with DFS on working through that very, very large project. And we were primarily focused on that notification portion and worked in conjunction with DFS to match information with the testing, the notification. We combed through those case files. I think it was a decades-long project involvement, and as Crime Commission, we also play a role on the Forensic Science Board because the chair of the Crime Commission serves on that or their designee. And for the large majority of the time, the chair has designated me to serve on the Forensic Science Board. So I also ended up serving as the chair of the DNA Notification Subcommittee for the board. So we have worked very closely with DFS and the Forensic Science Board for many, many years and worked together to complete that project. And you'll hear later from Christina, we have some numbers for you of where that project ended with the number of notifications and the status of those individuals involved, where you'll see quite a significant overlap with this project. So we're in a good position where we're not completely starting from scratch, but we have still more work that will need to be done. And so with that being said, you heard an introduction with Colin and Christina, who are here with me today. We're just staff members. So we work more in the research area, provide objective, nonpartisan information for the legislature on any matter of criminal justice, public safety. And so we report to our 13 Crime Commission members, and our commission is comprised of 6 members from the House of Delegates, 3 members from the Senate. We have 3 appointees from the governor, and then we have the Attorney General or designee who serve on our Crime Commission. So those are our policymakers, and we report to them. One of our Crime Commission members, Senator Survell, who is also the chair of Senate Courts Committee, was very interested in this topic, along with several other legislators. And that's how the Crime Commission came to be involved in these conversations. And so Senator Survell had suggested the budget language that has been shared with you. Amy, I believe that's been emailed out to everybody, and you're able to pull that up in just a minute. And that really is what is providing the role for the Crime Commission's involvement in this project as well. And so we will be using that budget language to guide the work that we do. But with any project, if questions come up today or with the SAC or the Forensic Science Board, the Crime Commission also has statutory authority to assist in other ways. And so we can call a meeting of our executive committee of the Crime Commission, if we need clarification or need to go back for guidance. So the budget language is a great starting point for directing everything. But as the project moves along, we still have some flexibility to maneuver as the SAC or Forensic Science Board sees fit for assistance from the Crime Commission. And so hopefully that makes sense. Does anyone have any questions about just the Crime Commission generally or the budget language that has been sent to you? I plan to go over a review of that, but didn't want to get too far involved if anyone had any questions. Okay, good. Amy, do you mind pulling up the budget language? Okay, perfect. So as you'll see, the main language that we have in the budget is copied there for you. And the reason the Crime Commission is involved is because of the scope. The podcast brought some allegations forth and questions, and the legislature really wanted to determine, well, what are we talking about here? What is the scope? What are we looking at? What are the numbers, and how do we get a handle on that? And so that's where our involvement really will come into play. And we'll be focusing on Mary Jane Burton files, and we're going to try our best to determine a lot of the numbers and really, very importantly, the number of individuals who are currently incarcerated are top priority, as well as any other individuals who may be under state supervision on probation or parole. But we'll also want to be sure to look at those who have been executed. We'll need to see who is deceased, and then we'll also be able to look at everything and try to determine the convictions. We certainly know that we'll need a lot of assistance in that area because it's very, very time consuming to determine the convictions and match up the information to make sure that you have the correct case with the victim, the date of the offense, the location of the offense. So it's very time consuming, and the information that we currently have in the large spreadsheet doesn't have everything that we need at the moment to make all of those matches. So we'll still need to get a lot of the personal identifying information before we can even determine the best addresses to send information out. We'll still need to be able to have that information to match up the conviction information once we receive that. And so it's going to be, I think, a lengthy process because we want to make sure that we do it well and do it accurately, but we also want to be sensitive to time constraints as well, which is why we've put together a proposed work plan as to how we plan to accomplish some of these directives that we have received from the General Assembly. So the good news is one of the numbers that was previously mentioned at the January meeting mentioned a 10,000 number. And that number really is a DFS lab number where Mary Jane Burton was involved in those cases. But once Christina took a closer look at that, we really were talking about less than half of that number with a named suspect in the case. And so we anticipate even that number will continue to decline once we continue that matching process and look at the number of unique cases in that entire database of the historic case file that DFS provided to us. So one of the first items that we'll need to do is document and verify that personal identifying information of those cases with the named suspect. And like I said, the incarcerated individuals are priority number one. And we'll also need to then determine that conviction information, which is, it sounds very simple, but it is very, very time consuming. And then we'll also want to make sure that we provide numbers for all of the other categories as we work. And so it's going to be a lot of moving parts and pieces to this, and a lot of different individuals will need assistance with, but kind of that bigger picture where we're going, that kind of gives that very brief overview. Christina is the real workhorse in all of this. She has been messing with the spreadsheets for quite some time now, and trying to match as much information as we can from that post-conviction project, as well as try and determine the unique cases that are in that large spreadsheet. So with that, I think that would be the most helpful information we'll provide today, is where we are with that analysis. And again, it's very preliminary. It's a work in progress. These numbers are going to change. They are, they're constantly in flux because we're getting new information from all of these different individuals who have been assisting us. So down the road, these will fluctuate, but we hope that the numbers will move in the downward direction, so the number of unique cases are not as significant as we originally had thought. Christina, I will turn it over to you because the next sheet is all of the numbers, which I think will help give us an initial scope of where we're headed.
Sounds good. Good morning again, everyone. So now for a little more detail on what we know so far relating to the case file review Director Howard and Ms. Jenkins have mentioned already this morning. Now, I know there's a lot of numbers on this chart for a Monday morning, but I'll walk you through it and I'm happy to answer any questions along the way. So at this point, 10,283 DFS lab numbers have been identified where Mary Jane Burton was the forensic examiner, of which 4,858 include at least one named suspect. The number of unique cases and individual named suspects must still be determined. Now let's look at this chart in further detail. Beginning with the blue box at the top, like I said, there's 10,283 DFS lab numbers included in the spreadsheet provided to Crime Commission staff by DFS, where Ms. Burton was listed as the forensic examiner. Now, while this 10,000 number seems high, in reality, this number is likely significantly larger than the actual number of cases where Ms. Burton was the forensic examiner. The reason we know this is because it was customary practice during the time frame Ms. Burton worked at the Central Lab for 2 DFS lab numbers to be assigned to the same unique case in instances where the RFLE was submitted to a lab other than the Central Lab, but where the forensic testing was actually performed at the Central Lab. DFS and Crime Commission staff have been working together to identify and link any such DFS lab numbers into unique cases. So for example, Fairfax County Police Department may have submitted an RFLE to the Northern Lab in 1976, which was assigned one DFS lab number. However, the forensic testing was actually performed at the Central Lab and was assigned a different DFS lab number. Thus far, we are very confident that in such instances where 2 DFS lab numbers refer back to this, that they refer back to the same Mary Jane Burton case. And DFS staff has worked really hard on this. We sent back the ones we believed were duplicates, so to speak, and they've already gone through a little over half, and nearly every single one were cases where we thought 2 DFS lab numbers were assigned back to the same case. They did indeed. And we know with certain high confidence because at the top of the scanned-in certificate of analysis, both of the DFS lab numbers were written at the top. So that raises our confidence to a very high level. So long story short, while this chart reflects the total number of DFS lab numbers, the number of unique Mary Jane Burton cases will be significantly less once this process of linking DFS lab numbers into unique cases is complete. Now we're done with the first box, but with that in mind, that's a very important issue to keep in mind. If we move on to the large gray and green boxes, when looking at the spreadsheet provided to us, there were 5,727 DFS lab numbers with no named suspects, as seen in the gray box, and 4,858 DFS lab numbers with named suspects, as seen in the green box. While most DFS lab numbers in the green box include only one named suspect, some include up to 5 named suspects. So how many people are we talking about? Staff identified over 6,500 named suspects across the 4,800 DFS lab numbers. However, when examining these 6,500 named suspects, many were listed as a named suspect in more than one DFS lab number. So for example, Johnny Smith could appear as a named suspect in 3 different unrelated DFS lab numbers. When accounting for individuals who appeared as named suspects in multiple DFS lab numbers, staff estimates approximately 4,100 unique individuals across these 4,858 lab numbers. Okay, now moving down the right side of the chart, looking at the darker pink box and the smaller gray box, further research, when looking at the named suspects, further research will need to be conducted to determine how many of these individuals were convicted versus not convicted. And then for those who were convicted, additional research will be required to classify these individuals into the various categories seen in the lighter pink boxes, including the number who are currently incarcerated, on state probation or parole, deceased, executed, or exonerated. Fortunately, we know a significant portion of our work is complete for those DFS lab numbers that overlapped with the PCDNA notification project. As seen in the tan box in the lower left-hand corner, we have thus far identified at least 1,785 named suspects who overlap between the 2 projects. Thus far, we know that 854 of these individuals were convicted, along with their DNA testing outcomes and notification status. So in closing, we want to reiterate that these are preliminary numbers and significant work will be required to identify the final numbers for all of the boxes. Therefore, the numbers in each of these boxes will change as the Mary Jane Burton case file review progresses. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Christina. That was a lot.
Yep, it's a Monday.
I have one question for you, just to be sure I'm understanding. So when I look at the list that you have for the convicted persons, incarcerated, probation, parole, deceased, executed, and exonerated, I'm wondering, does the probation parole also include people that perhaps are no longer under any supervision? So people that were convicted that are not under probation parole?
Excellent point. No, it would not. They're basically the remainder that would not fall into any of those small pink box, lighter pink boxes would be those who were convicted but aren't incarcerated or under any type of supervision and presumed to be alive.
Would they be people that would be also contacted?
Yes.
Okay.
So it may be helpful for illustration purposes to be happy to add a box.
If that's
Presumed
clear.
alive, not under supervision, or yeah.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else, any other members of the subcommittee have any questions or discussion?
Do you have like a general estimate of how long do you think it'll take to flesh out the rest of the numbers in the boxes? Months or years or weeks?
Certainly months.
Say that knowing where we were with our post-conviction DNA project, we're talking about many, many months into next year, maybe even longer before you can really get a handle on each of those numbers definitively. I would say that we'll be able to start adding numbers to those boxes, and we'll constantly be updating those as we get information. For example, we would be able to run lots of different database searches on these individuals once we get their personal identifying information. So right now we really are handicapped because we don't have the date of birth or socials to even begin to look for a lot of that information. And the real barrier is that convicted, not convicted, because we certainly don't want to be spending enormous amount of time and resources for those individuals who are not convicted. So we have multiple different layers to be able to even get to the point where we can use our resources and link up information with other state agencies or private organizations But once we start getting that conviction and PII, that's when things will start to progress and we'll be able to get numbers in those boxes.
Cool. Thanks. That's a give me a good idea of the scope of what you're doing. Thanks.
Any other questions or discussion from the subcommittee? All right, well, thank you, both Kristen and Christina. I appreciate that. And all the work that all of the groups are doing, including DFS. Is the scope of this is incredible. So I think I really am impressed with the amount of effort everyone's putting in for this important cause. I think at this point, I'll open the discussion up to any members of the subcommittee. So we've heard a lot. We've heard about the plan that DFS has. We've heard from the Crime Commission. Does anybody have any comments or anything else you think we should request for any additional things that we want these groups to help us look at?
I don't have anything specific. I think for me, the summary today was very useful. And I think in our previous, meetings, subcommittee meetings, thinking about the scope of what you had to do to kind of look at all these cases and triage and understand everything, I think this kind of lays out what I thought maybe you would have to do in terms of number of samples, number of cases, and then how you break these out down into the different categories. So it's interesting to see how you are doing that. And I think your engagement with the different innocence projects, Mid-Atlantic and UVA is a good idea. I think some of the public comments we heard at the last meeting were asking kind of for more of a kind of community to review these. So I think those are all positive things that you've articulated today.
Yeah, thank you. Good points. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add? I think the fact that we don't speaks to the comprehensive information that we were provided and that I think is going on. So again, I just want to appreciate, as Dr. Vallone said, all the groups that are volunteering to help with this, and also DFS for committing to to put their efforts into such a large and important project. I think at this point, I don't know if we have anyone from the public that requested to speak. Ms. Jenkins, are you aware of anyone?
I am not aware of anybody requesting to speak. Certainly they have the ability to raise their hand, and we can, Director Jackson will elevate them to a panelist so that they can speak, and then they'll have that opportunity for the 5-minute comment period. So the hand would be beside your name if you're having trouble locating it.
I was going to, so we have two people that have raised their hands so far, Peter Neufeld and Megan Shapiro. Peter Neufeld was first, so I'll go ahead and elevate him if this is the correct time.
I think it is, and as Ms. Jenkins says, we're limiting comments at this time to 5 minutes. And I will go ahead and start the timer. So, Mr. Neufeld?
If you are speaking, you're muted.
Oh, I see. Thank you. My compliments to the committee for obviously the very serious way they've taken these issues and the comprehensiveness of it. I just have a couple of comments to make or questions to ask, frankly, about matters which you've already taken a vote on. The draft of the proposed notification that's going to go out to, not to defendants, but to others, you use the language that I'm sorry. You say that the subsequent investigation and testing failed to support Mary Jane Burton's conclusions. My concern with the word fail to support is that simply means it's not a inclusion, and therefore you're including two categories. exclusions and also inconclusive. I think it'd be more accurate to say that the subsequent work, sorry, that the subsequent work contradicted her early conclusion. That would be more precise, and that would eliminate inconclusives as a category. The second comment I had to do with the letters that you're sending out to defendants, where Mary Jane Burton had done casework. The first concern is that you say in the letter, quote, whether you have the ability to reopen your case and have DNA testing done. It sounds like those two avenues are linked, reopening and DNA testing. In fact, under Supreme Court law, most relevantly, a case called NAPUE, N-A-P-U-E v. Illinois, there may be other options available to people where she did the work, but the evidence no longer exists. Quite recently, in the hair review cases coming out of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, there were two cases where they vacated the convictions despite the fact that the hairs no longer existed, and so DNA evidence was not possible. But given the nature of the erroneous testimony, it was deemed material. And the issue was not whether or not there was other evidence of guilt. The threshold for materiality when false evidence is given is a lot lower. So you might want to modify that letter to talk about or other options that may be available to defendants, not limited to DNA. Also, my other question was, in the letter that you're sending to defendants, how do you locate defendants whose cases were litigated in the 1980s, which is almost 50 years ago? I certainly don't know how, but I don't know what procedures you're going to employ to locate those people. And finally, it sounds like you're telling people that you want to notify them about doing serology work. I think what became very clear in the Grimm case, both with respect to her serology and claiming to see sperm when none existed, and her suggesting that 8 different hairs came from the same person when in fact they came from, it looks like 7 different people, that you wouldn't want to limit yourself to serology or even serology in hair. That if she was doing other kinds of trace work, whether it was glass, fibers, or what have you, those defendants need to be notified as well, because it's been our experience over the last 35 years in crime labs where you had problems like this, that if a person was either incompetent or committing fraud in one forensic discipline, the chances were pretty good that they were also doing it in other disciplines. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. I appreciate that. I'm thinking perhaps it might be a good idea to hear comments from both people before we address them in case they're related, or so unless, does anyone on the subcommittee feel differently? Okay, we'll go ahead and hear from the next public commenter, please, Director Jackson.
Yep. We also have one more too. Sarah Chu has also raised her hand. So, but Megan Shapiro, I am making a panelist.
Good morning. My name is Megan Shapiro. I'm a Virginia criminal defense attorney and also a part-time employee of the Indigent Defense Commission as an appellate public defender. And thank you all so much for your time and attention to this. It's so important, and we're very appreciative of the care that you're taking in handling this project. I just had one comment that I wanted to bring to your attention. I would be one of the potential volunteer attorneys who would be taking on some of these cases to review and ultimately potentially represent likely indigent clients that if they might be entitled to some relief because of what has happened. And at the very beginning of that process, I just wanted to let you know one of the hurdles that I anticipate that we might run into. And as volunteer attorneys with indigent clients, we wouldn't have any resources that I'm aware of available to us in starting these case reviews, starting to work with these affected individuals. But one of the early things that will probably be necessary in most, if not all of these cases, is to obtain files from the Commonwealth's attorney's offices and the law enforcement agencies that investigated the cases so long ago. And there is a part of the FOIA statute may allow us to access those files. It takes sometimes a considerable amount of time and effort to actually get access to those files. And one of the challenges to doing that is that agencies are allowed to use their discretion in redacting or excluding sometimes important information from the files. And they're also allowed to charge fees, which can sometimes, depending on how big the case is, get into the thousands of dollars to persons whose lawyers are trying to request these files to review. And so what I wanted to make sure that this was known, that this may be a challenge for some people, likely a lot of people, and that if it's possible, if perhaps in the letter, the initial letter or a subsequent letter that goes out to prosecutor and law enforcement offices could urge the agencies to provide the full files without redaction and to urge them to provide them to volunteer attorneys without charge. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Okay, I think we'll hear from the next person. Sorry, I'm trying to take notes and keep track of the time and everything.
Sarah, you may have to unmute. Because you are muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry. So I have thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. I have one comment and with that was related to the letter and then a comment that I'd like to share. So with regard to the notification letter to defendants, in response to Dr. Vallone's comment about whether or not to include the fact that the analyst was deceased, perhaps an addition that could be made was naming the analyst as a former employee, and then that way there's some clarity about the retrospective aspect of this review. With regard to the comment that I wanted to share, I just wanted to commend the SAC and the Crime Commission for the work that it's done here. And just to name it, because it's really important, that you identified the entire universe of cases, you characterize the different categories of cases, and you prioritize them using the principle of harm reduction and didn't exclude individuals based on common exclusionary issues, like whether someone's incarceration status. You've identified ways to notify people in multiple ways. And it sounds like there may be more discussions about how to effectively notify people given the passage of time. That's clearly a challenge, and that I'm confident that you'll meet. And then providing contacts for all the impacted people, so there's a place for them to go where they can feel safe to have discussions. It's notable that you're looking back at the executed and deceased cases. It demonstrates your commitment to and interest in justice. And you've been every step of the way responsive to past concerns and being explicit about it. And I think that demonstrates your interest in continuous improvement and maintaining public trust. And the transparency of this process and the inclusion of other constituents in the system is also part of maintaining and continuing to build public trust. I think that this process is a lesson to other states, and there are some issues that you're addressing that other states are confronting right now. So one example is that DFS took responsibility for casework that took place before the accreditation period of your lab. That is something that other laboratories are being challenged with, whether or not or who has jurisdiction. And I commend DFS for having always considered the past work of the laboratory as its current responsibility. I also commend how this committee has focused on justice first with an acknowledgement of resources. It would have been very easy to hear 10,000 cases and just stop and say, sorry, we don't have the bandwidth or the resources to do that. But because you believe in the strength of your system, and you were willing to take this deep dive, you were allowing the data and the science to lead the work, and seeking the appropriate resources in response. And I think that that's something that we should elevate and offer as a model to other states and jurisdictions. And knowing how DFS works, this entire audit will be documented and shared with the public. I think that one of the things that would be really helpful is as you're documenting the process, that identifying the system barriers, for example, what Ms. Shapiro mentioned with regard to access to records, that these may be very useful for others as they read your report and prepare themselves for potential system barriers and identifying the resources that are needed for a successful review. And so thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for conducting this process in a responsive and public manner. And I look forward to the continuing unfolding of this project. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ms. Chu. Very helpful. And my understanding is that Kristen Howard would like to speak again.
Yes, thank you. I just had a quick question. I heard from the public comment a couple items related to the letters, one to the Commonwealth's attorneys and the law enforcement agencies, and then the letter to the defendants. I just want to make sure I understand the process. Is the review subcommittee finalizing those letters today, or does that get sent to the SAC for any commentary? I just want to make sure I understand the process and the status of the letters.
So I think what we'll do is we'll probably have some more discussion based on the comments that we heard. And if we decide to perhaps amend the letters as we, based on the comments, we would vote on that again. And then I believe after that, we would bring our recommendations to these to the SAC tomorrow, which will also vote on it. But I'm going to defer to Ms. Jenkins to make sure that I have that accurate as well.
I think the best mechanism would be to if you're inclined to make amendments based on the public comments, to go ahead and do that now. Because it'll be a report to the SAC rather than them reviewing each individual letter. So if there's changes that should be made, I would say we need to do that now.
Yeah. Does that answer your question, Kristen?
It does, and if I may, just because of our involvement in the post-conviction DNA project, we did get a lot of criticism and questions regarding the letters, and we went through many different drafts and iterations. You're just trying to get the letters as simple as possible, and so that they would be easily understandable, using terminology that were easy for everybody, whoever was receiving them. I certainly understand that the defendant letter might not go out for some time, since that does require a lot of behind the scenes to discover the conviction information and the PII information to defendants. And so I think that there's plenty of time to make edits to that document. But in coordinating with the Commonwealth attorneys and the sheriffs, if it would be permissible, would you all approve a request for the Crime Commission to just make some suggestions along the way for this letter? Or would you like for us to make some suggestions now regarding the letter or letters?
Yeah, I mean, I think what might be appropriate is, I mean, I think I heard a few things from the public comments that perhaps we want to consider to modifying the letter now. And I certainly would like to hear what your comments and concerns are too. So I think we could just open it up. Maybe we could, I'm trying to think, is there something you think you want to speak to initially?
Well, I think what was mentioned, we had that review group that we put together of Commonwealth attorneys, private defense attorneys, indigent defense commission, a wide variety of stakeholders who were involved in that DNA notification project. And I was wondering maybe if they might have some input, or if perhaps the Commonwealth attorneys or the sheriffs. One thing that we did learn after the fact, that if we had involved more stakeholders up front of the groups who are actually receiving the letter, that we probably would have had it better received, because their counterparts had reviewed it in advance, so that it would speak their language, if you will. And I wasn't sure if that had been done, and I'm sorry for not have asking that earlier. We've had a lot of other things going on, and this is the first time I've really had time to hone in on the letter, and wasn't sure if today was the final day or not. But I think that with the magnitude of what we're asking, wanted to make sure that as many eyes as possible had an opportunity to provide input. And sometimes we learned along the way that it was much better when we worked with the sheriffs or the Commonwealth attorneys to put a letter together with them, or even have their chair or president co-sign the letter, work with us, so that it was a group effort. We've gotten a lot of responses back from working with stakeholders. That's been a very effective way sometimes to communicate with those groups when we're especially asking a lot of them.
Ms. Jenkins, do you know if the letter, if you've talked to any of those other stakeholders at this point?
The only group that has reviewed the letter is UVA Innocence Project on the defendant's letter. You know, the letter going to the Commonwealth attorneys and the chiefs is DFS's notification of an error in case review, or an error in case results. So that's something that we would need to send, whether or not this review was going on or not. And I don't know whether, you know, I certainly think that Mr. Neufeld's comment regarding contradiction should be considered on that, and any other changes, but I don't want to hold this letter any further because we need to notify the Commonwealth attorneys and the sheriffs and the chiefs that these cases, you know, I'm concerned about case destruction and case file destruction and all those things Ms. Shapiro is concerned about as well, and that we be able to get these to them as soon as possible, and get them holding on to both case files and evidence. So if we can get the finalization of that, I think the defendant's letter will morph as we determine what avenues are available. Although I certainly think that Mr. Neufeld's comments as well were well taken on that, and we could look at some revisions there. But I would really like to get to the point where we're going to release these case lists to the Commonwealth attorneys and the sheriffs and chiefs as soon as possible.
Okay. So then I guess my suggestion would be that we talk about the at least I heard 3 or possibly 4 comments about possible changes to the letter. So I'd like to open up the discussion to maybe talk about those and see what the subcommittee, if we want to vote or have a discussion and then decide if we're going to make any changes to the letter that we previously voted on. So the first item that I took note of from Mr. Neufeld was the comment about the evidence cannot be supported. And quite frankly, I can't find that in the letter. I'm not sure if someone else can point that out to me or to all of us.
So I think he's referring to the Grimm case, that last bullet here that I have up on the screen.
I see. Okay.
We indicated failed to support those conclusions, and he would prefer, I think, contradicted those conclusions, is if I'm understanding Mr. Neufeld's comment.
When subsequent analysis failed to support those conclusions versus subsequent analysis contradicted those conclusions?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone on the subcommittee, have any thoughts on that?
I think it's clear if you say contradicted rather than failed to support.
I think the only one concern I would have, because I agree, but by saying contradicted, does it imply that every result was contradicted? I mean, is there another way to perhaps be less definitive, or I could be overthinking that. So if others think just keeping it as contradicted is fine, I just feel like it's almost indicating to me that we're saying everything that was in there was wrong, which I don't know that that's accurate or not. Any other thoughts by anyone on the committee? Could we say contradicted some, or?
That would be a way to do it. You could. Yeah, there were 2 pieces to the Grimm case. If you all, one was the sperm identification, and subsequent analyses were not able to observe sperm or identify sperm. And then the hairs, which subsequent mito analyses, she had indicated all hairs came back to the victim when it was, I think Mr. Neufeld would say 6 or 7 different individuals. So what you could do is divide this in half and just indicated, when, and this is subject to y'all's approval and subsequent analyses, and it's factual. And then you can say contradicted down here.
I prefer that personally. Please, other subcommittee members, speak up if you have any thoughts or concerns.
I like the suggestion.
Clarifies, yeah.
I like what Amy wrote there.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Howard, do you have any other changes to the Commonwealth's attorney? I don't know of any other changes.
Yeah, I think that would be.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Not specifically, just more in the sense of trying to perhaps align the purposes of the letter for what DFS needs to send out to Commonwealth's attorneys, but then also trying to align it with the work of the Mary Jane Burton case file review and what we're trying to accomplish. Just trying to merge the two so they don't have to receive multiple letters really was one of the thoughts that had occurred to me, but really understanding that DFS has a different objective and goal and necessity to get this out as soon as possible. I don't want to impede that in any way, but just maybe that we'll have more communications that go out with Commonwealth attorneys or sheriffs or chiefs, as the project continues to evolve.
Sure, we're gonna.
Just the thought process there after reading the letter.
Yeah, this is for the purpose of that notification that we need to make as an accredited body to get this out. And you and I will be talking to the Commonwealths and the sheriffs, and we're going to have lots of conversation.
I figured that. Thank you.
Thank you. I had one, I guess, speaking to Megan Shapiro's comments, I believe she requested that if there was a way to urge the agencies to provide unredacted case files and to not charge for them. I don't know if that makes sense to put in this letter or if that would be more the letter that Ms. Howard would send out. I'm going to defer to you, Ms. Jenkins, to give us some guidance there.
I think because I think Ms. Shapiro's thoughts are well founded. We do need to talk to the parties. I think that would be the purpose of Ms. Howard and I going and talking to the Commonwealth's attorneys this weekend, as well as talking to the sheriffs on the 25th and talking to the chiefs when she is able to convene that webinar. The Crime Commission has a lot more ability to influence than DFS does. And that's what's great about having them as a partner in this. And she can certainly communicate that to them and ask for that kind of assistance as we go through these cases.
Okay, thank you. So it does seem like for that letter, that will be, so for the letter to the attorneys and police agencies, it's just that change that we just made are the only changes. Does anyone else have any other thoughts about changing anything in that letter before we move on to the letter to the defendants? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to the letter to the defendants, I believe Mr. Neufeld suggested in that second paragraph from the bottom, if it is determined that evidence from the case is still available and that DNA testing may be agreed to or ordered by the court, I believe he suggested we change that to something in effect, and that other options may be available or ordered by the court.
Sorry, I'm trying to get that one up.
Sorry.
Okay.
We're not seeing your full screen there.
All right, let me try again. Are you seeing the full letter now?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, is that the right?
Not the full letter, but it's so.
Yeah. So I think it was, yeah, no, sorry. I think I have an older version, the one that was sent to us.
Right.
So maybe it's below that.
I think there's.
I think it's the second paragraph that you was talking
If you scroll
about.
down, there's the DNA mentioned through reference.
Yeah.
So maybe I think he was saying what and options that may be available to you beyond DNA testing.
Yeah. I was thinking you ought to go all the way back to where it has whether you may, and just delete everything after that and say and discuss your options.
Okay.
I think that makes it simpler. Because it's the conversation with the lawyer is going to determine what's going to happen.
Yeah, the other place is down here as well.
Right.
Because we've got DNA testing there. It just may be to leave that as relief that may be available.
I agree.
I think grammatically that sentence doesn't make sense now.
I agree.
Something with you, I don't know. Just
your case with you and relief that may be available.
Yeah, I think that's better.
And then I think in combining both Mr. Neufeld's comments regarding serologists, we have changed that to individual, but Ms. Chu had indicated one former DFS employee, I think, rather than individual here.
Yes. DFS employee.
And you can,
I think that's a good suggestion. Unless other people have a reason, an opinion to think as to why that might not be good. Maybe a former employee.
Yeah. You need to delete, yeah, a former employee.
I don't think you need to change it everywhere.
Well, those are the only two places.
Okay.
I have a quick question. I just want to make sure I heard it correctly. These letters are only going out to defendants who we verified were convicted?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other thoughts or comments from the subcommittee members on the letters? All right. Is there, so before I call for a motion or a vote, is there anything else that the subcommittee members would like to discuss, to bring up? Okay, then I believe then I will call for a motion to accept the 2 notification letters as amended.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes and the revised or amended draft letters have been approved. Okay. Moving on. So the next item on the agenda is to select the next meeting date, and I would like to have a discussion with the subcommittee. It seems to me that we have done our diligence in reviewing the files that we did and asking the department to come up with a review notification plan. They have done that, and now we have a number of agencies working on this, as well as the Crime Commission. So we could continue to meet as a separate subcommittee if we feel necessary. But what I'm wondering would be, if moving forward, if what the plan would be for the DFS and and the Crime Commission to report back to us the status of their review. If that's the case, maybe we could just have them report to the full SAC, since the subcommittee is on the full SAC, and if we're just hearing where they're at, and we could probably ask them questions then. And then if anything did come up that we felt like we needed to reconvene the subcommittee, we could, as part of the full SAC, we could ask for the subcommittee to be reconvened if there was something technical that we had to review. I'm wondering if there's really a necessity for us to keep meeting separately, if really we're just hearing we're hearing from, and we're of course just reviewing what they're saying. But I'm just opening that up for other comments, thoughts.
I'll agree with you on that one, as long as, something major comes up and we need to meet as a subcommittee, fine. But I think otherwise, reporting it as part of the regular SAC meeting is fine.
I would agree as well. Hearing about it in a more, yeah, at the main session of the SAC would be sufficient.
Okay. I mean, I think the idea is we still need to have oversight of what's going on, but I think we can do that as part of the full SAC. And so I think then I would request a motion to wish for the oversight of the review and the reporting to be given back to the full SAC and disband the subcommittee until further notice. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second, anyone?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion passes. And I believe that concludes the agenda for today. Is there any subcommittee have any other question or information we need to discuss? I don't think so. So I will then ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. I should have said this earlier, but I just want to thank everyone for taking your time for being here. We really appreciate it. And we'll see everyone at the next SAC meeting. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.